No one expected it to end in a courtroom, but the moment the judge asked Kody Brown to raise his right hand, everything the family had hidden for years began to unravel. What was once called love now stood on trial as betrayal, money, and secrets came crashing into the open. The courtroom feels colder than expected. Not physically, but emotionally. The kind of cold that settles into your chest when you know something irreversible is about to happen. Kody sits at the center table, his posture stiff, jaw tight. His eyes don't wander. They don't dare to. Because just a few feet away, seated on opposite sides of the room, are the women who once built a life with him. Janelle doesn't look at him. Christine doesn't even try to hide her frustration. Meri sits quietly, her expression unreadable, like someone who has already accepted whatever outcome is coming. And then there's Robyn. Robyn's hands tremble slightly as she adjusts a stack of papers in front of her. Her eyes flicker toward Kody for just a second, but he doesn't look back. That is the first sign something is very wrong. The judge clears her throat, pulling everyone back into the moment. This court will now hear the case regarding financial disputes, property claims, and allegations of misrepresentation within the Brown family. The words hang in the air. Financial disputes. That's what this is officially about. But everyone in the room knows that's not the real story. The real story started years ago. Flashback. The house in Flagstaff is filled with voices, laughter, tension, overlapping conversations. On the surface, it looks like a big, complicated, but functioning family. But beneath that surface, cracks are already forming. Christine stands in the kitchen, arms crossed, watching Kody speak passionately about family unity. "You don't understand," Kody says, pacing. "We have to stay together. That's the whole point." Christine's lips press into a thin line. "Together?" she asks quietly. "Or under your control?" The room goes silent. Kody stops pacing. And for the first time, something shifts. Back in the courtroom, the attorney representing Janelle stands up. "Your Honor, we intend to prove that funds belonging collectively to the family were diverted, without full consent, for the benefit of one household." Every word lands like a stone. Robyn's head snaps up. Kody finally reacts, his eyes flash with anger. "That's not true," he mutters under his breath. But the damage is already done. The attorney continues, "We will show records, testimonies, and communications that suggest a pattern of financial imbalance, one that ultimately led to the breakdown of these relationships." Janelle shifts in her seat. For a moment, she looks almost relieved, like someone who has been waiting a long time to finally speak. The judge nods. "You may proceed." The first witness is called. But before anyone stands, Christine exhales slowly, shaking her head, and in that small, almost invisible moment, you can see it. She's not just here for money, she's here for closure, maybe even justice. The witness steps forward, sworn in, seated. And then, state your name for the record. The voice is calm. Too calm. Robyn Brown. The room shifts instantly. Kody turns to look at her now. Really look at her. And what he sees isn't reassurance. It's fear. Robyn's voice trembles slightly as she answers the first few questions. Yes, we shared finances. Yes, there were agreements. But then the attorney leans in just slightly. And were all parties fully aware of how those funds were being allocated? Robyn hesitates. It's subtle. Barely a second. But in a courtroom, a second is everything. Kody's expression hardens. Janelle watches closely. Christine leans forward. Meri closes her eyes briefly as if she already knows the answer. Robyn swallows. I believed they were. Believed. Not knew. Believed. The word echoes louder than anything else she said. The attorney doesn't push immediately. Instead, she steps back, letting the silence grow, letting the tension build, because everyone in that room just heard it. Uncertainty. Doubt. Maybe even guilt. Kody shakes his head slightly, whispering to his lawyer, This is being twisted. But is it? Or is it finally being revealed? The judge makes a note. The atmosphere shifts again, and for the first time since this began, it doesn't feel like a defense. It feels like the beginning of exposure. Robyn grips the edge of the stand, her knuckles turn white, because she knows what's coming next. The documents, the messages, the timelines, things that can't be explained away with belief. The attorney reaches for a folder, slowly, deliberately. This court will now review financial transfers made over a period of 3 years. Kody exhales sharply. Christine's eyes narrow. Janelle doesn't move at all. And Meri finally opens her eyes, looking straight at Robyn. Not with anger, not with sadness, but with something far more unsettling. Acceptance. As the first document is placed in front of the judge, Robyn whispers, almost too softly to hear, "I didn't think it would come to this." And that's when everything changes. Because the next piece of evidence doesn't just show where the money went. It shows who knew and who didn't. And as the attorney begins to read, Kody's face drains of color. And just as the courtroom leans in, waiting for the truth to finally surface, the judge raises her hand. We will take a short recess. The tension snaps, but doesn't disappear. It lingers, heavy, unfinished. Because whatever is in that document has the power to destroy everything that's left. And when the court comes back, nothing will be the same. The courtroom doors close again after the recess, and the air feels heavier than before, like everyone knows something irreversible is about to unfold. Kody doesn't sit the same way anymore. His shoulders are tighter, his breathing sharper, while Robyn avoids looking at anyone, her gaze fixed on the table as if eye contact might force the truth out faster than she's ready to give it. Janelle sits still, almost too still, like she has already made peace with whatever comes next, while Christine leans forward, her eyes locked on the evidence folder now resting in the attorney's hands, and Meri remains quiet but alert, watching everything with a kind of distant clarity that only comes after years of emotional exhaustion. And right here, as the silence stretches just a little too long, you can feel it, the moment where everything is about to tip, and there's no going back. The judge returns, takes her seat, and nods once, signaling the continuation, and immediately the attorney steps forward, opening the folder with deliberate care, pulling out a set of printed financial records that seem ordinary at first glance, but carry the weight of something far more serious. Beneath the surface. These documents, she begins, her voice steady but sharp, detail a pattern of transfers made from shared family accounts into a separate property fund primarily benefiting one household, and she doesn't need to say which one, because everyone already knows. Robyn's fingers curl tighter around the edge of the witness stand, and Kody shifts in his seat, his jaw clenching as if he's preparing to interrupt. But he doesn't. He can't, because now the evidence is speaking for itself. The attorney continues, pointing to specific dates, specific amounts, each one like a small crack spreading across a foundation that once held everything together, and as she reads, the courtroom seems to shrink, the walls closing in on the truth that has been carefully avoided for years. Because when details start lining up too perfectly, denial becomes harder to hold on to. Can you explain this transfer? The attorney asks, sliding a document toward Robyn, and for a moment Robyn just stares at it, her lips parting slightly, her eyes scanning numbers she clearly recognizes but doesn't want to acknowledge out loud. That was for family needs, she says finally, her voice softer now, less certain, and the attorney tilts her head just slightly, pressing without raising her tone. Family needs, she repeats, yet the funds were directed exclusively toward a mortgage tied to your residence. The room reacts, not loudly, not dramatically, but in small shifts, a breath held, a glance exchanged, a subtle tightening of posture, and Kody leans forward, finally unable to stay silent. That house was for all of us, he says, his voice firm but edged with frustration. Everything I did was for the family, and Christine lets out a quiet, almost incredulous laugh, shaking her head as she looks down, then back up again, her expression sharp. Was it? She mutters under her breath, just loud enough to be felt more than heard. And sometimes the most powerful challenges aren't shouted, they're whispered with just enough truth to sting. The judge glances toward Christine but says nothing, allowing the moment to pass as the attorney continues, now pulling out a second set of documents. This time, messages, printed conversations that seem far more personal than financial records, and suddenly the tension shifts from numbers to intent. We also have communication records, the attorney says, placing them down carefully, which suggests that not all parties were informed of these financial decisions, and that's when Janelle finally moves, leaning forward slightly, her eyes narrowing as if she's been waiting for this exact moment. "Read it," she says quietly, not to the judge, not even directly to the attorney, but to the room itself, and the attorney obliges. Reading a message aloud, Kody's words, unmistakable, clear, and impossible to reinterpret, about reallocating funds without causing unnecessary conflict. The silence that follows is different now. It's not tense, it's heavy, like something has just settled into place. Because once intention is exposed, excuses start to fall apart. Kody shakes his head immediately. That's being taken out of context, he insists, but his voice lacks the same confidence it had earlier, and Robyn closes her eyes briefly, as if hearing the words out loud has made them more real than she expected. Meri watches her closely, her expression softening for just a second, not in forgiveness, but in recognition, like she understands exactly what it feels like to sit there and realize the story you believed is no longer holding up. The attorney steps closer, her tone still controlled, but now carrying a sharper edge. "Were you aware," she asks Robyn, "that these decisions were being made without full agreement from the other parties?" And this time, the hesitation is longer, more visible, more painful to watch. Robyn's voice barely rises above a whisper. I trusted that everything was being handled fairly," she says, and Janelle exhales slowly. A sound that carries years of frustration, years of silence finally finding a way out. "Trusted," Janelle repeats quietly, shaking her head, "that's what I did too." And in that moment, trust stops sounding like strength and starts sounding like something that was used against them. The courtroom feels different now. Less like a place of arguments and more like a place of revelations, each statement peeling back another layer of what really happened behind closed doors, and the judge watches closely, her expression neutral but attentive, as if she's already seeing the shape of the outcome forming. The attorney returns to the financial records, pointing out a final sequence of transfers, larger amounts, closer together, harder to justify as coincidence, and Kody's composure begins to crack. Just slightly, his hands moving more, his posture less controlled. "We were under pressure," he says, trying to regain control of the narrative. "We had to make decisions quickly." But Christine looks at him now, directly, her eyes steady and unflinching. "No," she says, her voice calm but firm, "you made decisions alone." And when accountability finally enters the room, it doesn't ask for permission, it demands answers. The words hang there, undeniable, and for the first time, Kody doesn't respond immediately, his silence louder than any defense he could offer, and Robyn looks between them, her expression caught somewhere between fear and realization, like she's beginning to understand that this isn't just about defending choices anymore, it's about facing consequences. The judge leans forward slightly, her voice cutting through the tension. "This court will require a full accounting of all shared assets and transactions," she states, "and any discrepancies will be examined thoroughly." And that word, thoroughly, lands with weight, because it means this isn't ending anytime soon. Because the deeper the truth is buried, the longer it takes to uncover, and the more damage it reveals along the way. As the session begins to wind down, the energy in the room doesn't settle, it intensifies, like a storm that's only just begun to gather strength, and as people start to shift in their seats, preparing for another recess, something unexpected happens. Meri stands up. Slowly. Deliberately. And all eyes turn to her. Because she hasn't spoken, not really, not until now, and when she finally does, her voice is calm, almost too calm. "There's something else," she says, looking directly at the judge, then briefly at Kody, and whatever she's about to reveal changes the direction of everything. Because just when you think the truth is fully exposed, someone brings in a piece that no one saw coming. The moment Meri stands, the entire courtroom shifts again. Like the ground beneath everyone's feet is no longer stable, and even the judge pauses slightly before nodding for her to proceed. Because there's something in Meri's expression, something steady, something resolved, that signals this isn't just another statement, this is something bigger. Kody turns toward her, confusion flashing across his face, but also something else, unease. Because if there's one thing he understands, it's that Meri doesn't speak unless she has a reason, and right now, she clearly does. Robyn's eyes widen slightly, her posture stiffening as if she's bracing for impact, while Janelle leans forward again, her attention fully locked, and Christine watches with a quiet intensity, like she's been waiting for this moment longer than anyone else. And just like that, the energy changes again, because when the quietest person in the room finally decides to speak, it's rarely something small. Meri takes a slow breath, her hands steady at her sides, and when she begins, her voice is calm, controlled, but carrying a depth of emotion that doesn't need to be loud to be powerful. "There were conversations," she says, choosing each word carefully, conversations that weren't included in what's been presented so far, and immediately the tension spikes again, sharper this time, more focused. The attorney looks intrigued, the judge attentive, and Kody looks unsettled now, his earlier confidence slipping just enough to be noticed. What kind of conversations? The judge asks, her tone neutral but firm, and Meri's gaze shifts briefly toward Kody before returning forward. "Private ones," she answers, about how things would be handled and who needed to know. The words land hard, not because they're loud, but because they confirm what everyone has been starting to suspect. Because secrets don't just exist, they're protected, planned, and sometimes carefully hidden behind silence. The attorney steps closer, sensing the shift, sensing the opportunity. "Are you saying," she asks, "that there were intentional decisions made to withhold information from other members of the family?" And for a moment, Meri doesn't answer immediately, not because she doesn't know, but because she understands the weight of what she's about to confirm. When she finally speaks, it's simple. Yes. That single word ripples through the room like a shockwave, and Kody exhales sharply, shaking his head, already preparing to push back. "That's not fair," he says quickly, his voice rising slightly. "You're twisting things," but Meri doesn't even look at him when she responds. "Am I?" she asks quietly, and that question hits harder than any accusation could. Because sometimes the truth doesn't need to argue, it just needs to be acknowledged. Robyn's breathing becomes more noticeable now, her composure slipping as she looks down at her hands, her fingers fidgeting, her mind clearly racing through memories, trying to reconcile what she believed with what's now being said out loud. Janelle watches her, not with anger, but with a kind of tired understanding, like someone who has already gone through the same realization and come out the other side of it. Christine, however, doesn't hide her reaction, her expression sharpens, her posture straightening as if every word Meri says is confirming something she's felt for years but never fully proved. The attorney leans in again. "Can you provide specifics?" she asks, and Meri nods slowly, her eyes now steady, unwavering. "There were discussions about finances," she says, "about properties, about how decisions would be presented to the rest of us," and she pauses, just long enough for the weight of that to sink in before adding, and sometimes about how to avoid disagreements by not sharing everything. The courtroom falls into a deeper silence than before, because this isn't just about money anymore, this is about intention, about control, about a system that may have been operating differently than it appeared on the surface. And when patterns start to form, isolated incidents begin to look a lot more like deliberate choices. Kody leans forward, his frustration now more visible, less contained. "You're making it sound worse than it was," he insists, his voice tight. "We were trying to keep the peace," and Christine lets out another quiet laugh, this one sharper, more direct. Keeping the peace for who? She asks, her eyes locking onto him, and Kody hesitates, just for a fraction of a second, but it's enough. Robyn finally looks up, her eyes glistening slightly, caught between defending and understanding, between loyalty and truth, and it's clear she's struggling, not just with what's being said, but with what it means. Because the hardest part of the truth isn't hearing it, it's realizing you might have been part of it. The judge raises a hand, bringing focus back to the proceedings. "Miss Brown," she says to Meri, "do you have any evidence to support these statements?" And Meri nods again, this time reaching into her bag, pulling out a small envelope, unremarkable at first glance, but instantly commanding attention. Kody's eyes fix on it, his expression shifting again, this time with something closer to concern, and Robyn's posture tightens even more, as if she already knows what might be inside. "These are messages," Meri explains, holding the envelope carefully, and notes from conversations that were never meant to be shared, and the way she says it makes it clear this isn't speculation, this is documentation. The attorney steps forward, accepting the envelope, her expression focused, while the judge watches closely, already understanding that whatever is inside could significantly alter the direction of the case. Because evidence doesn't just support the truth, it can completely redefine it. As the first document is pulled from the envelope, the tension becomes almost unbearable. Every eye in the room locked on to that single piece of paper, and Kody's composure finally begins to crack more visibly, his hands moving, his breathing uneven, while Robyn looks like she wants to say something, but doesn't, because whatever is about to be revealed might be something she can't explain away. The attorney scans the document quickly, her eyebrows lifting slightly before she looks up. "Your Honor," she says, her tone more serious now, "this appears to be a direct communication discussing the allocation of funds with explicit instructions not to disclose certain details, and that's it, the line that changes everything." The courtroom reacts, not loudly, but collectively, a shift in energy that feels undeniable, and Kody shakes his head again, more forcefully this time. "That's not what it looks like," he insists, but even as he says it, the certainty is gone. Because when words are written down, they don't change, they wait to be read exactly as they are. Christine leans back slightly, exhaling as if a long-held tension has finally started to release, while Janelle closes her eyes briefly, not in defeat, but in validation, like something she always felt is finally being seen clearly. Meri stands still, her expression unchanged, not triumphant, not angry, just certain, and Robyn looks like she's realizing piece by piece that the story she believed might not be the whole story after all. The judge reviews the document carefully, her face unreadable, but her silence speaks volumes, because this isn't something that can be dismissed easily. "This court will need time to examine these materials," she says finally, her voice steady, "and determine their relevance and impact on the case," but before she can say anything more, the attorney speaks again. "Your Honor," she says, "there may be additional documents connected to this communication, documents that have not yet been disclosed," and that statement lands like a final blow, because it suggests this isn't the end, it's just the beginning. And just when it feels like the truth has reached its peak, it reveals there's even more beneath the surface. Kody freezes, just for a second, his reaction subtle but unmistakable, and Meri's eyes flick toward him briefly, not accusing, not emotional, just knowing, and that look alone raises a question no one in the room can ignore: what else hasn't been revealed yet? The judge calls for order, the tension barely contained now, and as the session begins to close, the sense of uncertainty doesn't fade. It deepens, because now it's not just about what's been uncovered, it's about what's still hidden. And as everyone begins to shift, preparing for what comes next, one thing is painfully clear: whatever is in those undisclosed documents has the power to change everything all over again. The courtroom feels different now, heavier than before, like every person inside understands that whatever comes next will cut deeper than anything already revealed, and as everyone settles back into their seats, the quiet isn't calm, it's tense, expectant, almost suffocating. Kody sits rigid, his earlier confidence now replaced with a guarded stillness, while Robyn looks visibly shaken, her composure hanging by a thread as she keeps her eyes down, avoiding the weight of every glance directed her way. Janelle's expression is steady but firm, like someone who has finally reached a point where silence is no longer an option, and Christine sits with a quiet intensity, her gaze unwavering, while Meri remains standing for a moment longer before slowly taking her seat again, her face calm but carrying the unmistakable weight of what she has already set into motion. And just when it feels like the truth has already done enough damage, something even more personal begins to surface. The judge calls the room to order, her voice cutting through the tension, and the attorney rises once again, holding a new set of documents, thicker this time, more detailed, more dangerous, and without wasting a second, she begins. Your Honor, what we are about to present is not just financial. It is behavioral, she says, and that single word shifts everything, because this is no longer about numbers or transactions, it's about patterns, decisions, and intent over time. Kody exhales sharply, shaking his head, already anticipating where this is going, but he says nothing, because deep down, he knows he can't stop it. The attorney continues, laying out a timeline, dates, events, conversations, all connected in a way that forms a narrative far more troubling than anyone expected. And as she speaks, the courtroom listens, not just with attention, but with a growing sense of realization. Because when separate moments are connected, they stop looking like coincidences and start looking like a story. Over the course of several years, the attorney explains, there appears to be a consistent pattern of prioritizing one household over others, financially, emotionally, and in decision-making authority, and Robyn's head lifts slightly at that, her expression a mix of disbelief and fear, while Christine lets out a slow breath, like she's been waiting for someone to finally say it out loud. That's not true, Kody says quickly, his voice sharper now, but there's a crack in it. A slight break that wasn't there before. And the attorney doesn't raise her voice, doesn't argue, she simply gestures to the documents. Then perhaps you can explain these patterns, she replies calmly, and that calmness makes it worse, because it leaves no room for distraction, no room for deflection. And when the truth is presented without emotion, it becomes even harder to deny. The judge leans forward, her attention fully locked now as the attorney begins to read specific entries, times when decisions were made without group discussion, instances where funds were redirected, moments where communication was intentionally limited, and with each example, the tension builds, layer by layer until it becomes almost unbearable. Janelle closes her eyes briefly, not in avoidance, but in recognition, like she's reliving each moment as it's being described, while Meri watches Kody closely, her expression unreadable but intense, and Robyn's breathing becomes uneven, her hands gripping the edge of the table as if it's the only thing keeping her grounded. Christine, however, doesn't look away. She watches everything, every reaction, every shift, every crack forming in the narrative that once held them together. Because sometimes the hardest part isn't hearing the truth, it's watching everyone else finally hear it too. We also have testimony, the attorney adds, indicating that concerns raised by other family members were dismissed or minimized, and that's when Janelle opens her eyes again, her voice quiet but firm as she speaks without being asked. They weren't just dismissed, she says, her gaze fixed forward, they were ignored, and the room reacts not loudly but deeply, because that word, ignored, carries a weight that's impossible to soften. Kody turns toward her, frustration flashing across his face. That's not fair, he says, but Janelle doesn't back down this time, doesn't soften, doesn't hesitate. No, she replies, her voice steady. What wasn't fair was pretending everything was equal when it wasn't. And in that moment, fairness stops being an idea and becomes a line that was clearly crossed. Robyn looks between them, her eyes wide, her expression breaking further as she begins to understand the full scope of what's being said, and for the first time she looks not just defensive, but conflicted, like she's caught between the version of events she believed and the one now unfolding in front of her. The attorney steps forward again, her tone still controlled, but now carrying an unmistakable edge. This pattern, she says, did not just affect finances. It affected relationships, trust, and ultimately the stability of the entire family structure, and that's the point where everything shifts from legal to deeply personal. Because now it's not just about what was done, it's about what it cost. Because the real damage isn't always measured in money, it's measured in what's broken along the way. The judge takes a moment, reviewing the documents, her expression serious, her silence deliberate, and when she finally speaks, her words are careful but firm. The court recognizes the significance of these claims, she says, and will require further examination of both financial and interpersonal evidence, and that phrase, interpersonal evidence, lingers, because it means this case is no longer confined to numbers or paperwork, it's about the dynamics. That shaped everything. Kody leans back slightly, running a hand through his hair, his frustration now mixed with something else, something closer to realization, while Robyn sits frozen, her earlier certainty gone, replaced with a quiet, growing awareness that this situation is far more complex than she allowed herself to see. Christine exhales slowly, her posture relaxing just slightly. Not because the tension is gone, but because something important has finally been acknowledged, and Meri watches it all with a steady gaze, her role in this no longer silent, no longer hidden. And when the full picture starts to come into focus, it becomes impossible to return to the version of the story that came before. The attorney gathers the documents, preparing to conclude this portion of the session, but before she sits down, she adds one final statement. There is reason to believe, she says, that additional records, potentially critical to this case, have not yet been disclosed, and the room reacts again. That familiar wave of tension rising once more, sharper this time, more urgent. Because now it's not just about what's been revealed, it's about what's still missing. Kody's reaction is immediate, subtle but unmistakable, his posture tightening, his gaze shifting, and Meri notices, of course she notices, and that small, almost imperceptible exchange between them raises a question that hangs in the air, unanswered but impossible to ignore. The judge nods slowly, her expression firm. If there are undisclosed materials, she says, they must be presented to the court, and with that, the direction of the case shifts again. Deeper, more intense, more unpredictable. Because hidden evidence doesn't stay hidden forever, it waits for the moment it can change everything. As the session begins to close, the tension doesn't fade, it lingers heavier than ever, because now everyone knows there's more to uncover, more to face, and more at stake than they originally believed. And as people begin to stand, to gather their things, to prepare for what comes next, one thing becomes painfully clear. Whatever is still hidden isn't just important, it's explosive. And when it finally comes out, it won't just affect the case, it will redefine everything they thought they knew. The next session begins with an almost unbearable stillness, the kind that settles in when everyone knows the truth is no longer hiding, it's waiting to be confirmed, and as the courtroom fills again, there's a visible shift in every face, every movement, every breath. Kody walks in slower this time, his confidence no longer leading the way, replaced instead by a quiet tension that follows him to his seat, while Robyn sits already, her posture tight, her eyes distant as if she's been replaying everything in her mind over and over again. Janelle looks prepared, grounded in a way that suggests she's no longer afraid of what comes next, and Christine carries a calm sharpness, like someone who has already made peace with the outcome but still needs to see it through, while Meri sits composed, her earlier revelations still echoing in the room even before a word is spoken. And right here, you can feel it, this isn't just another hearing, this is the moment where everything starts to come together. The judge enters, her presence steady, her expression serious, and without delay, she addresses the court. We will now proceed with the review of any remaining materials relevant to this case, she says, and that single statement tightens the atmosphere again. Because everyone knows what remaining materials means, it means whatever has been hidden is about to surface. The attorney stands, holding a final file, thinner than the others, but somehow heavier in implication. And as she steps forward, every eye follows. Your Honor, she begins, we have obtained additional records that directly connect previously presented evidence with intent and authorization. And that word, authorization, lands hard. Because it points to something undeniable. Decisions weren't just made, they were approved. Kody's expression shifts instantly, a flicker of alarm breaking through his restraint while Robyn looks up, her face pale, her lips parting slightly as if she already senses what's coming. Because when responsibility becomes clear, there's nowhere left to hide. The attorney opens the file, revealing a series of signed documents and verified communications, each one tying together the financial actions, the private conversations, and the patterns already discussed, and as she begins to explain, the story that once felt fragmented now starts to lock into place with unsettling clarity. These records indicate that multiple transactions and decisions were not only directed, she says, her voice steady, but knowingly structured in a way that excluded full disclosure to other involved parties. And that's it, the confirmation that shifts everything from suspicion to reality. Janelle exhales slowly, her eyes closing for just a moment as if a weight she's carried for years is finally lifting, while Christine watches Kody now, not with anger, but with a kind of quiet finality, like she's seeing the end of something she once tried to hold together. Meri remains still, her expression unchanged, because for her, this moment isn't shocking, it's expected. And when the truth finally matches what you felt all along, it doesn't surprise you, it settles you. That's not how it happened, Kody says suddenly, his voice sharper, more desperate now, but the strength behind it is gone, replaced with something closer to defense than certainty, and the attorney doesn't argue, she simply presents another document, placing it in front of the judge with careful precision. This communication, she explains, includes direct acknowledgement of selective disclosure, and the phrase echoes, undeniable, heavy, final. Robyn's breathing becomes uneven again, her composure slipping as she looks at Kody, searching his face for something, an explanation, a denial, anything. But what she finds instead is hesitation, and that hesitation says more than any words could. Because sometimes the silence between two people reveals more than everything they've ever said. The judge reviews the documents carefully, her focus unwavering, and the room waits, suspended in a moment that feels both endless and fragile, like everything depends on what she says next. Janelle watches quietly, her posture steady, while Christine leans back slightly, her hands folded, her expression calm but resolute, and Meri sits with a quiet strength. No longer in the background, no longer uncertain. Robyn lowers her gaze again, her emotions now impossible to hide, caught in the realization that the situation is far more serious than she allowed herself to believe, and Kody looks like a man who is finally running out of explanations. And when every defense falls apart, what's left is the truth, unfiltered and unavoidable. The judge sets the documents down, her expression firm as she looks across the courtroom. The evidence presented raises significant concerns regarding transparency, consent, and equitable treatment within the shared financial structure, she states, her voice calm but authoritative, and every word carries weight, because this isn't speculation anymore, it's recognition. Kody leans back slightly, his shoulders dropping just enough to show the shift, while Robyn closes her eyes briefly, as if trying to steady herself in a moment that feels like it's slipping out of her control. Janelle nods almost imperceptibly, and Christine exhales slowly, her gaze softening just a fraction, not in forgiveness, but in closure, while Meri remains steady, her role in bringing this forward now fully realized. Because closure doesn't always come with relief, sometimes it comes with acceptance. The judge continues, outlining the next steps, the need for full disclosure, the potential consequences, the path forward, and as she speaks, the reality of the situation settles over everyone in the room like a final, unshakable truth. This isn't just a dispute anymore, it's a reckoning, a moment where everything that was hidden, avoided, or dismissed is now being faced directly. Kody looks down at the table, his hands still, his expression unreadable, while Robyn sits quietly, her earlier certainty gone completely, replaced with a quiet, overwhelming awareness of everything that has led to this point. Janelle, Christine, and Meri sit together in a way they haven't in a long time, not physically close, but emotionally aligned in a shared understanding of what has just unfolded. And in the end, it's not about who speaks the loudest, it's about who finally stands in the truth. As the session draws to a close, the tension doesn't explode, it settles, heavy and final, like the aftermath of something that can't be undone, and as people begin to stand, to gather their things, to prepare to leave, there's a sense that this is not the end, but it is a turning point. Because whatever happens next will be built on everything that has been revealed here, in this room, in these moments that changed everything. And as Kody finally looks up, his gaze meeting Robyn's for just a second before she looks away, one question lingers in the air, unanswered but impossible to ignore. What happens now, when the truth is no longer hidden and there's nothing left to protect?